there, everybody. Today we're going to start a new book, and it's called Cam Jansen. Actually, it's Case 20, Cam Jansen and the Birthday Mystery. And this is such a great series that we have in the library. Mrs. Colby's going to try to read one book out of a lot of different series that we have in the popular series section. And that would be levels J, K, L, M. In that whole section, there's so many books. And so many books that kids don't pick up. They look at the cover and they don't necessarily give them a chance on the inside. So we're going to try to read one of each. And when you come back, there's a whole basket of these that you could pick up. Cam Jansen is a really fun character, and they call her Cam, short for camera, because she has a photographic memory. So when she takes a picture of something, she can remember it perfectly in her mind. Like if she took a picture of the back of this book, and then you hit it, and said, Cam, what does it say on line 3? She could pull up that picture in her mind and she could tell you exactly what it said on line 3. So we can take pictures in our brain, but we usually can't remember every single line on a page or everything. So that's why they call her Cam. And it makes her a really good detective because her mind is always taking permanent pictures of things that she can go back to and go, oh, there was a clue in that picture that we just didn't see. So on the back of the book is a little blip. That's always big to read when you start. And it says, can Cam find the thief who robbed Granny and Gramps? Mysteries follow super sleuth Cam Jansen everywhere she goes, even to a party. Cam has put together a surprise party for her parents. But when Granny and Gramps call from the airport to say that they've been robbed, Cam and her parents rush to their side. Now it's time for Cam to find the thief. And she is a detective. She solves mysteries. So we'll get going. It's written by David A. Adler. The Birthday Mystery. All right. This one doesn't have a table of contents. Most chapter books do. But this one does not have a table of contents. It just starts right in on chapter 1. Quack, quack. The ducks look hungry, Cam Jansen said to her parents. Let's feed them. Oh, we didn't bring any bread, Cam's mother told her. And it's getting late, Cam's father added. It's almost time for dinner. Cam looked at her watch. It was getting late, but not late enough. She had to keep her parents out a while longer. Cam looked around. People were sitting on benches. An old man and woman walked by. They were holding hands. There were ducks on the lake. A boy and his mother were riding in a small boat. Let's walk around the lake, Cam suggested, or we could rent a boat. No, Mr. Jansen told her, we must get home. Cam's parents started toward the parking lot. Cam didn't. She blinked her eyes and said, click. And that's when she says click, it's like clicking your camera, and she takes a picture of whatever's in front of her. She blinked her eyes and said click. Then she closed her eyes and called to her parents. Give me a memory quiz. Ask me how many ducks are on the lake. Ask me how many people are sitting on the benches. Mr. Jansen turned and said, okay, how many ducks are on the lake? Cam has a photographic memory. It's as if she has a mental camera with pictures in her head of everything she's seen. When Cam wants to be sure to remember something, she blinks her eyes and says, click. And here's a picture of where she was. Click. That's the sound of her mental camera taking a picture. With her eyes still closed, Cam looked at the picture she had in her head. She counted the ducks. The boy in the boat threw a pebble in the lake. Quack, quack, quack. 6 ducks flew off. There are 12 ducks, Cam said with her eyes still closed. I'm sorry, Cam's father told her and smiled. There were only 6 ducks swimming in the lake. Cam opened her eyes and counted the ducks. I was wrong, Cam said, but I clicked. I'm never wrong when I click. 6 and 6 are 12, Mr. Jansen joked. Maybe your mental camera took a double exposure. Don't tease, Cam, Mrs. Jansen told her husband. Then she said to Cam, there's nothing wrong with your camera. When you clicked, there were 12 ducks on the lake. Some of them flew off. Cam's real name is Jennifer, but when people found out about her amazing photographic memory, they nicknamed her the Camera. Soon her nickname was shortened to Cam. Cam looked at the many people sitting on the benches. She blinked her eyes and said, click, and then closed her eyes. Now ask me about the benches, Cam said. Ask me about the people sitting on them. Mr. Jansen asked, what color is the shirt of the man sitting on the bench close to the lake? Cam smiled. You're trying to trick me, she answered. There's a woman sitting on that bench, and she's wearing a blue jacket, a blue and green striped shirt, and white pants. Her hair is red like mine, and she's wearing a scarf. You're right, Mr. Jansen said. You really do have an amazing memory, Cam. Now, let's go home. Cam opened her eyes and looked at her watch. Oh no, Cam said, it's so late. Let's hurry home. As they walked to their car, Mr. Jansen said to Cam, at first you wanted to stay here. Now you're in a rush to get home. You're acting funny. Oh, I'm just acting hungry, Cam told her father. I just want to go home and eat dinner. Well, maybe we should go to a restaurant, Mrs. Jansen said when they were in the car. Oh no, Cam said. Let's eat at home. We have egg salad and spinach left from lunch. That's what I want. Mrs. Jansen turned and looked at Cam. At lunch, you said you hated egg salad and spinach. You are acting funny. They drove for a while, and then they turned down onto their block. It's Sunday, Mrs. Jansen said as they got close to their house. Why are there so many cars parked here? What's going on? Chapter 2. Cam was right behind her parents as they walked from the car to the house. Mr. Jansen opened the door. Surprise! The hall and the living room were filled with friends and family. Many of them were wearing party hats. Some were blowing with noisemakers. There were lots of happy birthday and congratulations signs. Cam's parents looked around. They were both smiling. Cam and the party guests sang, Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday Jane and Barry, happy birthday to you. This is such a surprise, Mr. Jansen said. All of our favorite people are here, Mrs. Jansen added. Cam's friend, Eric Shelton, was at the party. So were his parents and his twin sisters, Donna and Diane, and his baby brother, Howie. Excuse me, please, Mr. Sheldon called out. He carried in a large cake. The cake was covered with pink icing. 40 and 40 was written in blue icing in the center of the cake. Mr. and Mrs. Jansen's 40th birthdays were during the same week, just a few days apart. Whose idea was this? Mrs. Jansen asked. It was Cam's, Eric said. She planned the whole party. She kept you at the park so we could set everything up. Mrs. Jansen's parents were at the party. She hugged and kissed them. She hugged her friends. Surprise, I'm here, Cam's Aunt Molly called out. She hugged Mrs. Jansen and said, I'm really surprised to be here. I travel so much that sometimes I don't even know where I am. Molly works for the airline, Mrs. Jansen explained to the people nearby. Granny and Gramps are coming too, Cam told her father. They should be here soon, Mr. Shelton added. Their flight should have landed about an hour ago. Aunt Molly said, my flight landed this morning. I know where I am today. I'm here, but I don't remember where I was yesterday. Well, I'm just happy you came to the party, Mrs. Jansen told her. Me too, Cam said. Mr. Shelton called out, let's eat, and everyone followed him into the dining room. Mr. Shelton set the cake on the table. There were also plates of cookies, baby carrots, and celery sticks. There were bowls of pretzels and popcorn, too. Mrs. Jansen cut out a slice of birthday cake and gave it to Aunt Molly. She was about to cut another slice when the phone rang. Mr. Jansen lifted the receiver and said, Hello. He listened for a moment, and then he said, Oh my, well that's terrible. He listened some more and said, We'll be right there. Meanwhile, you call the police. That was Granny. She and Gramps were robbed, Mr. Jansen said as he hurried to the door. They're alone in the airport parking lot, and I'm going to get them. Oh, I'm going too, said Mrs. Jansen. Chapter 3. Cam's parents hurried out of the house. Cam and Eric followed them. Mr. and Mrs. Jansen got into the front seat of the car, closed the car door, and drove off. They were in too much of a hurry and too upset to notice that Cam and her friend Eric were in the back. It's our party. I was just cutting the cake when we left, Mrs. Jansen said as they turned the corner. Maybe one of us should have stayed there. Oh, they're our friends, Mr. Jansen said. They'll understand. Oh, and my father's good at cutting the cakes, said Eric. Cam's parents turned around. They saw Cam and Eric sitting in the back of the car. You shouldn't be here. You should be at the party, Cam's mom told him. I want to see Granny and Gramps, Cam said. And there's a thief to catch, said Eric. Eric is usually her partner in solving all these mysteries, and they've solved some pretty big mysteries. And maybe there's a mystery to solve, Cam added. You know I love solving mysteries. They were driving on a highway now. There was a large green sign ahead pointing the way to the airport. We're going to the airport to pick up Granny and Gramps. Nothing else, Cam's father said sternly. If there's a mystery, the police will solve it, Cam. They were now at the airport, and they drove through a short tunnel under a runway. Then they drove on a winding road through the airport. On one side, people were hurrying to board planes, and on the other side was a large parking lot. Look for them, Mr. Jansen said. Granny said they're in Section 4 of the parking lot. There was a path for people walking to and from the parking lot. The light above it had turned red. Mr. Jansen stopped the car, and all of the people walked past. Look for them, Mr. Jansen said again. There were so many people crossing in front of the car that Cam couldn't see anyone. The traffic light changed to green. Cam and Eric and Cam's parents kept looking for Cam's grandparents. Honk, honk! The driver waiting behind the car wanted to go. Mr. Jansen lowered his window. Granny! Gramps! He called out. The people closest to the car turned, but they weren't Cam's grandparents. Honk, honk! I'm parking in Section 4, Mr. Jansen said. He drove to the parking lot entrance. Mr. Jansen drove into the gate. He pulled out a time card. The gate went up, and he entered the lot. Granny! Gramps! Mr. Jansen called out as he drove slowly through the lot. Granny! Gramps! Cam called out. The airport was very noisy. Planes were landing nearby. Horns were honking. No one heard Mr. Jansen and Cam. It was a very large lot. The parking spots closest to the path were taken. Mr. Jansen drove to an almost empty part of the lot. He parked against the fence. Mr. Jansen hurried out of the car. Cam and Eric were about to follow him when Mrs. Jansen stopped them. Don't run ahead, she told Cam and Eric. This airport's a big place. I don't want you to get lost. Cam, Eric, and then Mrs. Jansen started toward the path. Then Mrs. Jansen stopped. I'm depending on you and your photographic memory, she told Cam, to remember where our car is parked. Their car was parked between a small red sports car and a gray van loaded with luggage. Cam stood back so she could see the Jansen's car, the sports car, and the loaded van, and she blinked her eyes and said, click. All right, that's where we're going to stop for today. So they haven't found their grandparents. They had to leave their own 40th birthday party. And that's just where the mystery's beginning, I believe. Cam always kind of sets it up. She always is right in the middle of everything, and she sniffs out a mystery. So I would think in the next chapter, something is going to happen. Chapter 4. And you know how usually title or chapters sometimes have titles. They don't always. This one's just called Chapter 4. Sometimes they have interesting names for the chapter. So you go, oh, I wonder what that's going to be about. Kind of entices you to come into the book and finish up a chapter. Okay, so we will pick up on Chapter 4 tomorrow. And I cannot wait to see what happens and what's going on with Gran and Gramps. All right, have a great rest of your day. See you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.